Get out of 3A. Mr. Hale wants the seat and security is coming.
Lauren's order cut through first class. Adrian raised his confirmed boarding pass. The white executive beside him showed nothing.
If his preference outranks my ticket, put that in writing.
Lauren didn't. She typed agitated. Phones rose as officers escorted the calm black passenger off the plane he had paid to board. Blue Meridian thought it had protected a valuable client and removed a problem. Minutes later, a $100 million decision froze, and no one at the gate understood why. Toronto Pearson was awake before sunrise under cold morning light. Adrian Wallace moved through Terminal 1 alone, a black laptop bag over one shoulder and a navy overcoat across his arm. He was 46, American, and careful about the space he occupied. Not timid, deliberate. His suit was dark blue and simple. The only thing on him that carried history was the steel watch on his left wrist. His father had worn it for years before handing it to him. Adrian touched the face once while checking the departure board. Blue Meridian Flight 604 to Vancouver, Gate D17, on time. By evening, he was scheduled to inspect Blue Meridian's Vancouver Operations Center before the final investment review later that week. The proposed investment totaled $130 million USD, enough to replace an aging reservation system, expand staff training, and protect routes Blue Meridian was considering cutting. The financial reports were nearly finished. The cultural review was not. That was why Adrian had declined the escort, lounge reservation, and executive car Harbor Point had arranged for him. He wanted to see the company while no one thought they were being examined. At D17, the gate agent scanned his phone. The machine flashed green. "Good morning, Mr. Wallace. Seat 3A. Have a pleasant flight." Adrian thanked her and checked the paper boarding pass inside his passport holder. 3A. First class. Confirmed. He had selected the window 18 days earlier to review the final risk file. Inside the aircraft, the cabin carried the calm of expensive travel. Cream leather seats, brushed metal trim, water beside folded napkins. Adrian placed his bag overhead, sat in 3A, and opened a blue folder. The first pages covered operating costs. The next reviewed customer retention. A section titled Passenger Complaints and Internal Escalation followed. He had read 3 paragraphs when footsteps stopped beside him. Adrian looked up. Preston Hale stood in the aisle wearing a charcoal suit beneath a camel-colored coat. His silver hair was combed back. His expression settled into offense. A younger assistant waited behind him with 2 phones and a leather portfolio. Preston looked at the row number, then at Adrian. His eyes traveled from Adrian's shoes to his watch, then to his face. It was a quick inspection, but Adrian knew it. He had seen it in hotel lounges, private clubs, and conference rooms where people searched behind him for the person they assumed held authority. "I think you're in the wrong seat," Preston said. Adrian glanced at the number above the window, then lifted his boarding pass. "This is 3A. Preston barely looked at the paper. "I always sit here on this route." He said it as though repetition had become ownership. Adrian kept the pass visible. "What seat is printed on yours?" Preston's mouth tightened. Before he answered, a flight attendant approached from the front galley. Her name tag read Lauren Pike. The change in her manner was immediate. "Mr. Hale, good morning," she said, warm enough to suggest familiarity. "Is something wrong?" Preston nodded toward Adrian. "Someone is sitting in my seat." Lauren turned. The warmth stayed in her posture but disappeared from her voice. "Sir, may I see your boarding pass?" Adrian handed it over. She read the name, route, and seat number. Her eyes paused on 3A. Then she looked at Adrian instead of asking Preston for his ticket. "Do you have identification with you?" The question hung there. Adrian had cleared airport security and scanned a valid boarding pass minutes earlier. None of it seemed to count now. Across the aisle, an older woman lowered her reading glasses. Preston remained untouched by the same suspicion. Adrian reached for his passport without haste, though something old tightened beneath his ribs. Not anger. Recognition. He placed the passport beside the boarding pass and met Lauren's eyes. "Before we continue," he said, "will you be checking both passengers by the same standard?" Lauren's fingers closed around the paper. Uncertainty touched her face. Adrian looked at Preston, then at the ticket in her hand. The dispute had begun with seat 3A. It was already becoming about who was believed before proof and who was required to provide it twice. Lauren kept Adrian's boarding pass between two fingers, studying it longer than the information required. His name was printed clearly. The fare class showed first class. Seat 3A appeared in bold beneath the flight number. Paid in full. No upgrade code, no standby mark, no irregularity. Still, she did not hand it back. "Did you purchase this directly through Blue Meridian?" she asked. Adrian watched her face. The question sounded routine until he noticed Preston was still standing beside the row with his own boarding pass hidden inside his coat pocket. "Yes," Adrian said, "through the airline's website." Lauren tapped her tablet. "Did you use reward points?" "No." "Was there an upgrade involved?" "No." She glanced at him again, as if the answers had failed to support the explanation she expected. "Are you traveling with anyone else in first class?" Adrian's expression remained composed, but a small weight settled behind his sternum. "No. Why would that affect the seat printed on my ticket?" Lauren ignored the question. Preston shifted impatiently and checked his watch. His assistant stepped aside to let boarding passengers pass, but no one asked either man for proof. Across the aisle, Ruth Delgado folded the corner of her newspaper and placed it on her lap. She had spent years mediating workplace disputes for a federal agency in Washington before retirement. She recognized unfairness most clearly when it tried to sound procedural. "Excuse me," Ruth said. Lauren turned, surprised to find another voice entering the exchange. "Why are you only checking his purchase history?" Lauren tightened her grip on the tablet. "Mom, we're following procedure." Ruth looked at Preston. "Then why hasn't procedure asked that gentleman for his ticket?" Preston gave a short laugh. "They know me here." Ruth did not raise her voice. Knowing someone is not the same as verifying a seat. A few passengers stopped pretending not to listen. A man in row 4 lowered his phone from his face but kept the camera pointed forward. Lauren's cheeks warmed. She tapped through several screens, moving faster now. Then she stopped. The confidence in her posture weakened by a fraction. Adrian saw it. "What does the system show?" he asked. Lauren hesitated. "It currently lists you in 14C. Adrian took out his phone and opened the Blue Meridian app. The boarding screen refreshed. For a moment, he thought he had selected the wrong trip. Then he saw it, 14C, Economy. 10 minutes earlier, the same screen had displayed 3A. His paper pass still did. His digital receipt still did. The gate scan confirmation still did. Something had changed after he boarded. He held the phone beside the paper ticket. "Who changed my seat?" Lauren looked toward the front galley. It was quick, almost instinctive, but Adrian noticed. "The system may have synchronized late," she said. "That can happen. After the gate accepted me into 3A? There may have been an operational adjustment. Made by whom?" Lauren's lips pressed together. Preston exhaled loudly. "You're still going to Vancouver," he said. "No one is stopping you from flying." Adrian turned toward him. Preston's annoyance came from delay, not doubt. He had not considered that the burden might belong to him. "Reaching the same city does not make the treatment equal," Adrian said. The sentence was quiet. It carried anyway. Behind them, Noah Kim raised his phone fully and began recording. He had noticed the pattern. Every question went to Adrian. Every assumption protected Preston. Lauren saw the camera and straightened. Adrian's own phone vibrated in his hand. A secure banking alert appeared across the screen. Harbor Point escrow transfer completed. 30,000. He read it once. The money was now sitting inside the transaction designed to help Blue Meridian rebuild its future. Lauren was still holding the ticket that proved his present seat. Adrian locked the screen and slipped the phone back into his jacket. He said nothing about the transfer. Not yet. The truth was already clear. What remained uncertain was whether anyone in uniform would choose to honor it before a title forced them to do what was right. Before using power, he wanted to learn how far the airline would go while believing he had none. Lauren handed Adrian's boarding pass back without meeting his eyes. "Please remain seated," she said, then turned toward the front galley. Her steps were controlled, but their speed betrayed her. She slipped past the curtain and stopped beside a man in a dark blue Meridian suit. Adrian recognized him before Lauren spoke his name. Mitchell Crane, 57, Vice President of Airport Operations. His photograph appeared in Harbor Point's review file beside a chart showing complaint closures. Mitchell had never met Adrian in person and had not been included in Harbor Point's confidential investment discussions. From row 4, Noah kept his phone angled toward the front. The galley blocked most of the conversation, though one sentence carried through the cabin. Protect the account. Resolve the cabin before the door closes. Mitchell's voice stayed low. He did not say Preston's name. He did not say Adrian's. He did not order anyone moved. He did not need to. Lauren nodded once. The meaning had already chosen its target. When she returned, her language had changed. Mr. Wallace, the airline needs to make an operational seating adjustment. Adrian looked at her. Operational in what sense? The system has reassigned you. That tells me what happened on the screen. It does not tell me why. Lauren shifted the tablet against her hip. These decisions can involve several factors. Adrian closed the folder on his lap. Is seat 3A damaged? No. Is there a weight or balance issue? No. Does another passenger require an accessibility accommodation? Her mouth tightened. No. Is a family being kept together? No. Each answer removed another excuse until only preference remained. Lauren glanced toward Preston, who stood near the galley checking his watch as if the delay belonged to Adrian. We can place you in 14C, she said. We will refund the fare difference and provide a travel voucher. You are offering compensation for taking something you confirmed belongs to me. I am offering a solution. To whose problem? Lauren drew a slow breath. The calm in Adrian's voice affected her more than anger would have. Anger could be labeled. Calm had to be answered. Sir, I need you to cooperate. Adrian remained seated, hands resting on the closed folder. He had not raised his voice. He had not stood in the aisle. He had not touched anyone or blocked boarding. What have I done? He asked, other than remain in the seat printed on my ticket. Lauren opened her mouth, but no specific conduct came. Passengers watched. Preston shook his head. This is becoming unnecessary. Adrian turned to him. It became unnecessary when your preference was treated as my obligation. Before Preston could respond, Mitchell stepped through the curtain. Up close, he looked composed in the practiced way of executives who expected titles and time pressure to settle arguments. Mr. Wallace, I'm Mitchell Crane. I oversee airport operations for Blue Meridian. Adrian nodded. Then you can answer the question your employee cannot. Mitchell gave a narrow smile. The crew has discretion to resolve situations affecting cabin order and an on-time departure. Cabin order has not been disturbed. It is being affected now. Adrian studied him. Mitchell had taken the result of their decision and assigned it back to the person harmed by it. Put the reason in writing, Adrian said. State that Blue Meridian is moving a passenger with a confirmed first-class ticket to economy so a corporate customer can have his preferred seat. Mitchell's smile disappeared. We are not going to frame it that way. Then frame it accurately. We need your cooperation. Adrian looked down at the watch on his wrist. Briefly, the cabin faded behind another aircraft, another aisle, another man holding a valid ticket. Adrian had been 21 when his father surrendered a business-class seat to avoid missing a meeting. He remembered the stillness in his father's face afterward, the kind that cost more than anger. Later, his father told him never to trade dignity for someone else's convenience and never to give people the fury they were waiting to use against him. Adrian lifted his eyes. No, he said, quietly enough that Mitchell had to listen. I will not move. Lauren lowered her eyes to the tablet and began typing. The cabin had gone quiet enough for Adrian to hear the taps of her fingers. Noah, still recording from row 4, caught the screen at an angle. A list of incident categories appeared. Lauren selected one, passenger agitated. Hey, Adrian saw it too. He remained seated, shoulders relaxed, both hands resting on the closed folder across his knees. What behavior are you describing as agitated? He asked. Lauren did not look up. Your continued questioning is escalating the situation. Adrian's face barely changed, but something cooled in his gaze. A question does not become a threat because the answer makes you uncomfortable. The words landed without force, which made them harder to dismiss. Ruth Delgado turned toward the aisle. Preston stood near the galley with his arms folded. his expression arranged into weary patience. Mitchell took out his phone and stepped behind the curtain. When he returned, his tone had become official. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. We have one passenger refusing crew direction. We expect to resolve the matter shortly." A murmur moved through first class. Several heads turned toward Adrian. A woman in row 5 pulled her handbag closer. A man near the window glanced at Adrian, then away. The facts had not changed, but the label had. He was no longer a passenger with a confirmed seat. He was the reason the aircraft could not leave. Institutions often changed the category before they changed the truth. 2 airport security officers entered through the open aircraft door minutes later. The first was Daniel Ortiz, 45, broad-shouldered, with a radio clipped high on his vest. His younger colleague remained behind him. Mitchell met them before they reached row 3. "The passenger is refusing a lawful crew instruction," he said. "We attempted an operational reseating. He will not comply." Ortiz looked at Adrian, then at the empty aisle. No raised voice, no blocked path, no sudden movement. "Sir, may I see your boarding pass?" Adrian handed him the paper ticket, then opened the Blue Meridian app and pulled up the original confirmation. "The paper pass and purchase record show 3A, he said. "The app changed to 14C after I boarded." Ortiz compared the screens. "Who changed the assignment?" Lauren glanced at Mitchell before answering. It was an internal operational decision. Ruth spoke before Mitchell could redirect the conversation. "Officer, I was seated when Mr. Wallace arrived. He sat in 3A with a valid ticket. He has not raised his voice. Mr. Hale has not shown his boarding pass to anyone here. Every question, warning, and demand has been directed at Mr. Wallace." Noah lifted his phone. "I have the whole thing on video." Mitchell's jaw hardened. "Passenger recordings do not change the crew's authority before departure." Ortiz looked at him. "Authority to address a safety issue, yes. I'm trying to determine what the safety issue is." Mitchell stiffened. "The airline may remove a passenger who refuses crew instructions before pushback." Adrian rose slowly, not to challenge anyone, but to make the next exchange impossible to misunderstand. "Officer Ortiz, am I accused of threatening the safety of this aircraft?" Ortiz held his gaze. "No, sir. Am I accused of breaking the law? No. Have I threatened, touched, or blocked anyone?" Ortiz hesitated. "Not that I have observed." The cabin went still. Adrian picked up his laptop bag and slid the folder inside. "I will leave under formal protest," he said. "I want the names and titles of everyone involved, the stated reason for removal, and written confirmation that I was not considered a safety threat or accused of a crime." Mitchell opened his mouth, but Adrian looked at Ortiz. "Please note that I am complying with security while disputing the airline's decision." Ortiz nodded. "I'll document that." Adrian turned toward the open door. Behind him, Preston remained beside 3A, waiting for the seat as if patience had made it his. Adrian did not look back. He walked toward the jet bridge with his posture straight, carrying the weight of a record the airline had chosen to create. Ruth watched him leave, her expression fixed with quiet anger and regret. Adrian stepped into the jet bridge with Officer Ortiz on his right and the younger officer behind. No one touched him. Nothing in their posture suggested danger. Yet the image carried its own accusation. A black man in a dark suit being escorted away from first class while the aircraft waited behind him. By the time he reached the gate, strangers had begun inventing reasons. A man pulling a silver suitcase moved aside and whispered to his companion, "What did he do?" A woman holding a laptop bag saw the officers, then stepped backward, although Adrian had not moved toward her. He heard both reactions. He kept walking. The wound was not only losing seat 3A, it was the suspicion left behind, the way authority could place doubt around a person without saying a word. Minutes earlier, Adrian had been a verified passenger. Now people looked at him as if the uniformed men beside him were proof of something hidden. Ortiz guided him toward a section beside the gate desk. "Mr. Wallace, you are not detained," he said. Adrian looked at him. "Then make that clear in your report." Ortiz nodded, but his expression showed the discomfort of a man beginning to understand that procedure had not kept him neutral. Through the glass, Adrian could see the first-class cabin. Preston lowered himself into 3A and placed his coat across the aisle seat. Lauren brought him water. No passport appeared. No purchase history was checked. No one asked whether his ticket came from a third party or whether he had used points. Adrian's eyes dropped to the old watch on his wrist. He remembered his father moving into economy years ago after giving up a business class seat to a favored passenger. His father had remained composed, but never opened the presentation folder on his knees. At 21, Adrian had mistaken that silence for acceptance. Standing at gate D17, he understood it as exhaustion. Some humiliations took the energy needed for everything that came after. "Mr. Wallace?" A woman with silver-rimmed glasses approached from the desk. "I'm Nora Ellis, Gate Operations Supervisor." Her smile had the shape of an apology approved in advance. "We can keep you on this flight in 14C and issue a $1,200 voucher. We can also add reward miles. If you prefer, I can move you to first class on our evening departure." Adrian studied her. "What reason will be entered for the change?" Nora glanced at her tablet. "Operational reseating. There was no broken seat, no safety issue, and no accessibility need. I understand your frustration." "No," Adrian said quietly. "You understand the complaint category." Nora's smile weakened. Adrian continued, "Is the voucher paying for the seat or for the decision that I was easier to move than Mr. Hale?" She had no answer. His phone rang. Simone Carter's name appeared. Adrian stepped away and answered. "Our corporate travel portal just flagged your reservation as involuntarily removed from Flight 604, she said. "Are you safe?" "I'm safe." He gave her the facts in order. Confirmed 3A, post-boarding change to 14C, unequal verification, refusal to document the reason, security called, removal without a safety allegation. He added no motive he could not prove. Simone was silent for one breath. "What do you want done?" Adrian looked through the glass at Preston drinking water in his seat. "Hold the 100 million. Nora's head lifted. "Do not pull the 30 million already in escrow. I will not create a liquidity shock for employees who had nothing to do with this. Send a material governance concern to the board. Preserve seat records, crew communications, gate logs, security reports, and video. No public names. No demands for anyone to be fired before review." Simone's voice sharpened. "Understood." Adrian ended the call and slipped the phone into his jacket. He felt no satisfaction. This was not revenge. Harbor Point had been asked to trust Blue Meridian with money, judgment, and responsibility. In less than an hour, the airline had shown how quickly preference could become policy and how easily policy could turn a lawful passenger into a problem. Adrian was not punishing the company. He was refusing to finance a system before learning how deep the failure went. The first alert reached Blue Meridian's finance office before anyone understood what Adrian's call had set in motion. A scheduled capital release had been placed on hold. $100 million, pending a governance review. Nora's radio crackled with an instruction to hold the departure. Lauren's tablet displayed a restricted operational alert with no financial details. Both women knew headquarters had intervened, but neither knew why. Mitchell's phone rang. He walked away from the aircraft door and answered with the confidence of someone expecting a routine question. That confidence lasted less than a minute. "There's no reason to connect the funding notice to this," he said. "We had a difficult passenger and handled him under standard procedure." At Blue Meridian's Toronto headquarters, CEO Jonathan Mercer stood beside a conference table. "What was the passenger's name?" he asked. Mitchell hesitated. "Adrian Wallace." Jonathan opened Harbor Point's confidential investor profile. The name matched. The age matched. The scheduled Vancouver site visit matched. Jonathan resisted the conclusion. There were many men named Adrian Wallace. There had to be. "Send me the incident report," he said, "and the passenger image from the gate record." Blue Meridian's legal counsel forwarded the profile photograph attached to the investment agreement. A second screen showed a clip Noah had posted publicly from the aircraft, which Blue Meridian's communications team had already flagged and forwarded to legal. Jonathan placed the images side by side. The man in the Harbor Point photograph wore a warmer smile, but the eyes were the same. So was the steel watch. Jonathan felt the room narrow around him. He called Mitchell back. "The man you removed from 3A is deciding whether this airline receives another $100 million. Silence answered him. Then Mitchell said, "We had no way to verify who he was." Jonathan's voice hardened. His boarding pass verified his right to that seat. His title only verifies the size of the consequences you created. Mitchell turned toward the aircraft. For the first time, urgency cracked his control. "Get Wallace back on board," he told Lauren. "Restore 3A now." Inside the cabin, Preston had settled into the window seat and placed his phone on the console. Lauren approached him. "Mr. Hale, we need you to return to 4C. Preston stared at her. "You told me this had been resolved. We received new information." His face reddened. "You promised me this seat." Several passengers looked up. Ruth Delgado watched without hiding her disgust. The same airline that had treated Adrian's confirmed ticket as negotiable now treated Preston's preference as disposable. Lauren stepped back into the terminal. Adrian stood near the windows, speaking with Officer Ortiz. "Mr. Wallace," she said, "we can restore your original seat. The company has received new information." Adrian looked at her for a long moment. There was no triumph in his expression, only disappointment sharpened by clarity. "There is no new information about my ticket," he said. "The only new information is that you now know how much money I control." Lauren lowered her eyes. "The airline wants to correct the situation. The situation was clear before anyone knew my occupation." Behind her, Mitchell appeared at the aircraft door, pale and impatient. Adrian saw him, then looked toward the passengers waiting to depart. "I will not return to the flight," he said. "I am also not asking you to cancel it or punish everyone on board for decisions they did not make." Nora moved closer. "What do you need from us?" "Preserve the seat history, messages, gate logs, and security record. Add an immediate notation that I was not removed for a safety threat, and correct the full incident report through the formal review. Then let the aircraft leave when it is safe." Mitchell tried to interrupt. Adrian raised one hand, not in anger, but to stop another polished explanation from covering the facts. "You did not recognize an error when you saw the boarding pass," he said. "You recognized risk when you saw the balance sheet." No one answered. Through the glass, ground crews continued working beneath the wing. The aircraft had not moved, but the people around Adrian had. Minutes earlier, they had treated his dignity as a cost they could manage. Now they were measuring how much that decision might cost them. Flight 604 remained at Gate D17 only long enough for Blue Meridian to issue the preservation order, add Ortiz safety notation, and complete departure clearance. Across the city, Hannah Cho sat before 3 monitors in the airline's operations center, reviewing the seat history attached to Adrian Wallace's reservation. She was 28, careful by habit, and too familiar with the difference between a system error and a human decision disguised as one. The first record showed Adrian checked into 3A. The next showed his boarding pass scanned successfully at the gate. 4 minutes later, an administrator account moved him to 14C. The note contained 2 words, VIP accommodation. Hannah opened the access log. The credentials belonged to Airport Operations, the division Mitchell Crane controlled. She could not tell whether Mitchell had entered the change himself or ordered someone else to do it. She could tell the system had not acted automatically. A synchronization cycle scheduled within the hour would clear the temporary administrator session cache, leaving only the final seat assignment in the standard reservation view. Hannah felt her pulse rise. She exported the records, created a protected copy, and sent an urgent notice to compliance. She wrote only what the evidence supported. Post-boarding reassignment, administrative access, no technical trigger, no accusation, no guess. Just a record saved before convenience could erase it. Her supervisor sent a message asking whether the export was necessary before departure. Hannah stared at the question. Necessary was often another word for inconvenient. She replied that the temporary session data was scheduled for automatic deletion and copied the compliance director. Then she disabled her own ability to alter the file. The choice frightened her. Mitchell's division approved schedules and promotions across airport operations. Still, she pressed send. Evidence could not defend anyone if the first person who found it decided a quiet career mattered more than an honest, accurate record. At the gate, Lauren approached Adrian, while passengers watched the aircraft through the windows. Her face had lost the polished firmness she carried in the cabin. "May I speak with you privately?" she asked. Adrian stepped several feet away, though not far enough to disappear from the witnesses. Lauren held her tablet against her body. "Your paper ticket was valid," she said. "I knew that when I checked it." Adrian waited. Silence made room for honesty or retreat. Lauren chose honesty, though each word seemed to cost her. "Mr. Crane told me to protect the account. A flight attendant I worked with challenged a similar request last year. She lost her preferred route and spent months on reserve. I thought you would take the compensation and move. And when I did not, I selected agitated." Her eyes dropped. "That category brings security faster. It keeps the delay from being blamed on the crew." Adrian felt anger, but it did not arrive hot. It came with shape and direction. "You used a word that made me sound dangerous because it made the process easier." Lauren nodded. Tears gathered but did not fall. Adrian did not comfort her. Her regret mattered, but it did not belong at the center of what had happened. "Fear can explain your choice," he said. "It does not change who had to carry the consequences of it." Lauren swallowed. "I have messages. I will give compliance everything. I will not change my statement." Officer Ortiz stood nearby, listening. After Lauren stepped away, he approached Adrian with his cap in one hand. "I owe you the same honesty," he said. "I saw the ticket. I knew there was no safety threat. Challenging an operations executive would have required calls, reports, and a delay. Asking you to leave was simpler." Adrian studied him. Ortiz did not ask for forgiveness. That helped. "Systems rarely need everyone inside them to be cruel," Adrian said. "They only need enough people to choose the easiest path." Ortiz looked toward the aircraft. "I will amend my report. Write what you observed, not what the airline told you to call it." Ortiz nodded. Around them, Flight 604 prepared to depart. The story had moved beyond Lauren's questions or Mitchell's order. It now belonged to every person who had seen the wrong, understood enough of it, and decided that comfort, schedule, or career mattered more than stopping it. That afternoon, Adrian entered Blue Meridian's Toronto headquarters with Simone Carter and Gabriel Ross, Harbor Point's legal counsel. The building overlooked the airport, its floors facing the runways where Flight 604 had finally departed. In the boardroom, Jonathan Mercer waited beside Evelyn Shaw, the board chair. Mitchell sat near the far end of the table with representatives from legal, human resources, and compliance. No one offered coffee. No one mentioned the $100 million. Jonathan began carefully. "Mr. Wallace, what happened this morning was a service failure." Adrian placed his boarding pass on the table. "Slow service is a service failure," he said. "Changing a passenger's data, writing a misleading report, and calling security is a chain of decisions." The room settled around the distinction. Simone opened a file. She did not bury the meeting in technical language. She laid out the sequence. Adrian's original ticket showed 3A. The gate accepted him into 3A. 4 minutes later, an administrative account moved him to 14C. Preston Hale's ticket showed 4C, yet no one required him to display it in the cabin. Adrian was asked about payment method, reward points, identity, and travel companions after his ticket had been verified. Video showed him seated, speaking quietly, and leaving when security requested it. The incident report still described him as agitated. Lauren had stated that she was told to protect a corporate account. The audit log showed the change came through airport operations, not an automatic synchronization error. Mitchell leaned forward. "I never ordered anyone to remove Mr. Wallace from his seat." His voice was firm, though the skin beneath his collar had reddened. The phrase "protect the account" referred to maintaining a commercial relationship during a difficult passenger situation. Adrian watched him without interruption. A difficult situation created by whom? Mitchell glanced toward Jonathan. There was confusion in the cabin. "There was a valid ticket in the cabin," Adrian said. "The confusion began when your team decided it could be ignored." Evelyn folded her hands. "Can we establish who used the administrator account?" A screen at the end of the room lit up. Hannah Cho appeared from the operations center, pale but composed. She confirmed that the credentials belonged to Mitchell's division. She could not prove whether Mitchell entered the change himself or instructed another employee to do it. "What I can confirm," she said, is that the reassignment was manual. There was no system error, seat defect, balance issue, or accessibility code attached to it. Mitchell seized the uncertainty. Then there is no evidence I directed the change. Gabriel Ross slid a printed message across the table. Lauren had provided it to compliance less than an hour earlier. Mitchell read his own words in silence. Hale stays comfortable. Resolve 3A before departure, the room changed. Jonathan looked away. Evelyn did not. Is that your message? She asked. Mitchell's jaw tightened. It lacks context. Adrian's expression remained steady. Context may explain why you made the choice. It does not erase the choice. The compliance director opened another file. A preliminary search had found several older complaints describing similar seat changes, repeated identity checks, and passengers being labeled uncooperative after presenting valid documentation. Several complainants had also alleged racial bias, but the company had never reviewed the cases together. Some cases lacked video. Others involved separate employees and different circumstances. Adrian did not claim they were identical. One incident can reveal a failure, he said. It cannot prove every complaint came from the same cause. Mitchell looked relieved until Adrian continued. But repeated language, repeated burdens, and repeated outcomes are enough to require an independent investigation. Evelyn nodded. She understood what Adrian was refusing to do. He would not exaggerate the evidence to make the story cleaner. He would not allow Blue Meridian to dismiss it as one employee's mistake either. Jonathan looked at the boarding pass lying on the table. It was small, ordinary, and more reliable than every polished explanation offered that day. We will preserve the records, he said. Adrian met his eyes. Preserving them is the first decision you have made since this began. What matters now is what you do after you can no longer say you did not know. The room did not relax after the evidence was presented. It changed shape. The problem was no longer whether something had gone wrong, but where Blue Meridian intended to place the blame. A human resources executive spoke first. Lauren Pike can be removed from duty, she said. We can announce that a frontline employee failed to follow policy. The proposal arrived quickly. One employee, one statement, one closed file. Adrian leaned back and studied the faces around the table. Lauren had questioned him unfairly, entered a false description, and called security when no safety threat existed. She had responsibility, but she had not created the access privileges, the VIP culture, or the fear that made staff obey improper requests. Discipline her, Adrian said, but do not pretend she built the system that taught her this was the safest choice. The human resources executive started to reply, but Evelyn raised a hand. Her expression had hardened since reading Mitchell's message. We are not ending this at the lowest title in the chain. She turned toward the compliance director. Who authorized post-boarding seat changes without a documented safety reason? No one answered immediately. Why was a customer preference entered as an operational need? Why can agitated be selected without describing an observable action? Why are employees afraid of losing schedules when they refuse an improper instruction? And why were earlier complaints reviewed separately when the language and outcomes repeated? Each question removed another place to hide. Mitchell sat rigidly, his hands flat on the table. You are treating routine discretion as misconduct, he said. Corporate travelers expect flexibility. Protecting those relationships is part of my job. Adrian looked at him. You did not simply choose which customer to protect. You chose who would pay the price for keeping that customer comfortable. Mitchell's eyes narrowed. That is your interpretation. No. The ticket, the message, and the security report are the interpretation. Jonathan exhaled and turned to legal counsel. After a short consultation, he announced that Mitchell's access credentials would be suspended and that he would be placed on administrative leave pending an independent investigation. Mitchell looked at Jonathan as if betrayal, not accountability, had entered the room. After everything I have done for this company? He asked. Evelyn answered before Jonathan could. That history is why we must examine how much such authority went unquestioned. Lauren was removed from the flight schedule, but not terminated. Compliance would take her full statement, preserve her messages, and protect her from pressure to revise her account. A data hold would cover seat records, internal chats, gate video, and security documentation. Blue Meridian would hire an outside firm with no prior commercial relationship to the airline. Adrian listened, then placed 3 conditions on the table before Harbor Point would consider releasing the capital. First, Blue Meridian had to correct its internal incident record and ensure that any public statement described the removal accurately. It could not call him disruptive, difficult, or voluntarily reaccommodated. Second, employees needed written authority to refuse instructions that conflicted with passenger data or company policy, without losing routes, shifts, or promotion opportunities. Third, the new system had to protect a passenger before anyone learned the person's job, wealth, status, or connections. Jonathan asked whether Adrian wanted a public apology from the CEO. "A camera will not fix this," Adrian said. "And a polished apology could make the problem worse if it suggests I deserved better treatment because of who I am." Simone watched Evelyn write that sentence down. The meeting had lasted less than 2 hours, but fatigue showed differently on every face. Jonathan looked older. Mitchell looked cornered. Evelyn looked furious at how much had remained invisible under reports labeled resolved. Adrian felt none of the release people expected after power changed sides. He thought of the passengers who had no investment to freeze, no legal counsel waiting, no board chair compelled to listen. "I do not need you to prove that you know how to apologize to a CEO," he said. "I need you to prove that you know how to respect a passenger." No one reached for a response. For once, the silence did not protect the company. It forced the company to hear him. 4 months later, the independent investigation reached Blue Meridian's board. Its conclusions were more damaging than any public apology. Mitchell Crane had repeatedly used operational authority to grant unofficial favors to Preston Hale and other corporate travelers. Seat changes and boarding exceptions had been approved outside written policy. When passengers objected, complaints were sometimes reclassified as attitude problems so the disputes would not lower service scores. The pattern was not created by one employee, but Mitchell had protected it and discouraged questions. Blue Meridian terminated his employment after the review. Lauren Pike received formal discipline and completed additional training before returning under supervision. She helped develop a case study based on her decisions, but the company did not present her as a hero. Accountability required more than confession after harm had been done. The airline changed its systems. Once a boarding pass was scanned, a seat could no longer be changed for personal preference. Any post-boarding reassignment required a specific reason and approval from 2 departments. Audit logs became permanent. Words such as aggressive, agitated, and non-compliant could not be entered without a description of observable behavior. Employees received protection when refusing orders that conflicted with a valid ticket or company policy. In disputes, every passenger's documentation had to be checked by the same standard. Complaint data would be reviewed for racial disparities rather than filed as isolated events. Harbor Point did not release the remaining capital at once. The money moved in stages only after outside auditors confirmed the reforms were operating, not merely announced. Adrian insisted on that distinction. Policies written after a scandal were promises. Policies followed when no one important was watching were evidence. On a clear Monday morning, Adrian boarded another Blue Meridian flight at Toronto Pearson. He wore a brown jacket and carried the same black laptop bag. No employee recognized him. He took a seat several rows behind first class and placed his father's watch beneath his cuff. Boarding was nearly complete when a young black man settled into the window seat near the front. He checked the number above him twice, then placed his phone on the console. A white corporate traveler arrived moments later and stopped in the aisle. "That is usually my seat," the man said. "I'm a top-tier member. You'll need to move him." The flight attendant approached. Adrian felt his shoulders tighten. The cabin, the ticket, and the old humiliation returned in one breath. But the attendant did not turn only to the seated passenger. "May I see both boarding passes?" she asked. She checked them carefully. The young man's ticket showed the window seat. The corporate traveler's ticket placed him 1 row behind. "Sir, your assigned seat is behind this row," she said. "Please use the seat printed on your boarding pass." The traveler frowned. I fly this route every month. They always accommodate me. Your membership does not change another passenger's right to his assigned seat. There was no accusation in her voice. She followed the same rule for both men. No security officer was called. No one asked the young man how he had paid, whether he had used points, or whether he belonged in the cabin. The traveler muttered, then moved to his assigned row. The young man looked at the attendant. Thank you. I thought I was going to have to prove it again. She handed back his boarding pass. You do not need to prove anything else. Your ticket is enough. Adrian looked down at his father's watch. For years, the memory attached to it had carried the weight of a man giving up what was his, so others would remain comfortable. This time the memory did not pull Adrian backward. It showed him the distance between a promise and a changed decision. Blue Meridian had not passed its real test when it discovered that the passenger in 3A controlled $100 million. It passed when it protected a person whose name, profession, and influence meant nothing to anyone in the cabin. Adrian leaned back as the aircraft door closed. No one applauded. No executive made a speech. A passenger kept his seat. That was all. It was also the point. If Adrian's stand stayed with you, like this video and subscribe for more stories. Which moment affected you most and where are you watching from? Share both in the comments.